Welcome back to the channel. I'm excited to do another cartridge comparison. We are going to compare two very popular Winchester magnums, really the most popular magnums of their caliber. We are going to compare 300 Winchester Magnum to 338 Winchester Magnum. Which one is the better big game cartridge? Let's find out. Let's quickly talk about the history of the 338 Winchester Magnum. This cartridge was co-introduced in 1958. The other cartridge that Winchester introduced was the 264 Winchester. The 338 Winchester Magnum was dubbed as the Alaskan cartridge, while the 264 was supposed to be the lower 48 cartridge. Now, the only real successful one has been the 338 Winchester Magnum, and to this day, it is still known as the Alaskan cartridge. It is an amazing elk cartridge, moose, and bear cartridge. The parent case to the 338 Winchester Magnum is the 458 Winchester, which was introduced 2 years earlier in 1956. Now, the granddaddy case, or the grandparent case, is the 375 H&H. Let's go ahead and look at the performance of the 338 Win Mag. Now, bullet ranges for 338 Win Mag with other bullet companies, it goes as low as a 160 grain from Barnes, the TTSX, and it'll go all the way up to a 300 grain. So the 338 caliber is almost as versatile, and you could probably make an argument it might be more versatile than the 30 caliber. But let's go ahead and look at 200 grain performance in a 338 Win Mag. You're looking at 3,000, maybe 3,050 feet per second. That's pretty darn good. Then we move on to the 225 grain, which in my opinion is the real sweet spot for the 338 Win Mag. And you're looking at a muzzle velocity usually around 28, 2850. Nosler says possibly 2882. That is very good. That is a big bullet going pretty darn fast. Now let's look at the 250 grain. And in my personal opinion, this is kind of the top end for the 338 Win Mag. Sure, you could shoot up to 300 grains, but I feel like this is where you still get decent performance with a pretty heavy bullet. And you're looking at 27 to 2780. Again, extremely good. Now let's take a look at this case. This case is not as big as you would think. The 300 Win Mag actually has a bigger case than this. I'm going to go on record to say this is one of the most efficient magnums you can get. In 1963, Winchester introduced their 30 caliber Magnum, and since then it has become the 30 caliber Magnum to get in North America. In fact, I don't think any cartridge is going to come close anytime soon to beating the popularity of the 300 Win Mag in the lower 48. Now, much of the inspiration for Winchester to create the 300 Winchester Magnum was as a response to Remington, who, the year before, 1962, introduced the very popular and extremely successful 7mm Remington Magnum. Now, Winchester wanted to one-up the 7 Rem Mag, so they didn't just neck down their 338 Winchester Magnum. They actually lengthened the 300 Winchester Magnum case, but kept it at the long-action SAMI spec of 3.340 so that it could be used in a lot of rifles. So here is what the 300 Win Mag looks like right next to a 338 Winchester Magnum. And so as you can see, it's been lengthened a little bit. The neck is extremely short in the 300 Win Mag so that they could get a little bit more powder capacity. Let's go ahead and look at the data. We'll start with a 180 grain. That's kind of a good starting bullet weight for Winchester Magnum. And hand loading this guy, you get its full potential. You're getting velocities well over 3,100 feet per second. And then when we step up to bigger bullets, let's see, a 200 grain at almost 3,000 feet per second, which is interesting now. The 300 Win Mag has a bigger case than a 338 Winchester. However, shooting the same size bullets, the 338 Win Mag is actually faster. Now, how that works is, well, the 338 200 grain bullet is not near as long as a 30 caliber 200 grain, and overall The 338 Win Mag is just a more efficient cartridge than the 300. Now let's see how they compare downrange with ballistics. This is going to be hand-loaded data. I will show you factory ammo options and how they compare, but we're going to use a 200 grain AccuBond in the 300 Winchester Magnum at a muzzle velocity of 2950 with 3,865 foot-pounds of energy. Now out to 400 yards, the bullet's going 2342, and energy, yeah, it's darn good. 2,435 foot-pounds and only 24.5 inches of drop. While we're at it, let's just look at 500 yards. The bullet's still going fast enough to expand at 2,200 feet per second, and the energy is plenty for anything in North America. 2,153 foot-pounds, 44.5 inches of drop. Now let's see how the 338 Win Mag compares. We are going to use a 250 grain AccuBond with a BC of 0.575. So I'm trying to match BCs, and they're pretty darn close. Now with that heavy a bullet, the Winchester, the 338 is not going as fast, but it's still going a very respectable 2,700 feet per second, which gives it even more energy than the 300 Win Mag. This has almost 4,050 foot-pounds. This is going to have more recoil. You're just shooting a heavier bullet, wider diameter. Yeah, recoil is going to be a lot. Now out to 400 yards, the bullet's going 2,111 feet per second, so it's going about 100 feet per second slower than the 300 Win Mag. But your energy is actually just a little bit more. Now as in drop, this is no surprise. This is a heavier bullet going slower, so there's going to be 6 more inches of drop. And out to 500 yards, the bullet's going 1,976 feet per second, which I think is about the limits. You're getting really close to the limits of the AccuBond expanding below 2,000 feet per second. Your energy is still extremely good, matches really well with the 300 Win Mag, and then 55.3 inches of drop. So again, the 300 Win Mag does have an advantage in drop. Now let's compare factory ammo, and it wouldn't be one of my videos if I didn't have some handwritten notes on the performance. We'll start with the 300 Winchester Mag. We're going to use their Barnes 180 grain TTSX factory ammo, and that comes at a muzzle velocity of 2960. If you get a 300 Win Mag, reload it. You'll get so much better performance. Muzzle energy 3502 at 400 yards. I feel like this is about the limit for this factory ammo, where you're going to get good expansion still with a 180 grain TTSX, 2,231. And then, you know, the energy is okay and definitely good enough to kill, 1,990. But again, hand loading it, you're going to get like 500 more foot-pounds. 25.6 inches of drop. 338 Winchester Magnum factory ammo from Barnes with a 225 grain TTSX. Muzzle velocity of 2,800, which I think is really good. I think at least with this specific ammo comparison here, you're getting better performance buying the 338 Win Mag factory ammo. And you're going to get 400 more foot-pounds of energy at the muzzle. At 400 yards, the bullet's going 2132. And then the energy, almost 2,300 foot-pounds, and only about 3.5 inches more of drop. Real quick, I just want to show you the difference between 338 caliber and 30 caliber. The difference is extreme. On my right is kind of a typical 30 caliber bullet. This is a 175 grain. On the left is the giant 338 250 grain LRX. And you can see just the diameter difference is crazy. All right, I have the Alaskan resident, the guy I go to for advice on hunting in Alaska and what cartridges, and he just happens to own both 338 Winchester Magnum and 300 Winchester Magnum. So Chuck, I got to ask you this one question. It's the silly one. If you could only hunt with one of the two, 338 Win Mag or 300 Win Mag, what is your choice and why?
Well, it's a complicated answer. My choice is going to be 300 Win Mag right now because ammo availability. I'm still in the testing phase. I've got a few inch groupers, but not that real good half-inch group yet.
Yeah.
But the same thing is true with 338. So 338 Magnum, the only thing I can find is 20 ELDX, and I've seen that stuff shatter in a watermelon. Like I can't find anything that's really good. I do have a factory load that actually shoots an inch in my 338. I've only killed a deer in Georgia with a 300 Magnum before, and but I've killed a grizzly bear with a 338 here, and I will have to say, like, deadliness, they're about the same. Like it's not an issue, but ammo availability, weight of the rifle. My 300 has a pencil barrel and it's significantly lighter and has a long barrel, so it's 28 inches. So I'm fighting that barrel whip a little bit with the accuracy, but like yeah, I would say I would go 300 Magnum. But I have used 338, and if ammo were availability and I had that half-inch grouper with the 338, it would be the 338. But right now, it's the 300 mag.
Okay, and then I have one more question for you about 338 Winchester Magnum. What do you feel like is the ideal bullet weight and your favorite bullet for it?
My favorite bullet for it is the TTSX. I feel like the LRXs are too heavy, and
Hmm.
generally I like LRXs, but the 250 grain is just way too long for the 338 Winchester Magnum. So I like the 210 grain TTSX, a big 210 grain because you still need to have speed. If you're not hunting Alaska, the 185 grain TTSX would be just fine. And then I would be, in the lower 48, the 160 grain would be great on deer. There's the 160 grain TTSX or 165. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just feel like 210 is going to give you the best of all world speed and and accuracy. And the one thing about when I found about 330 at Winchester Magnum, when you shoot like 225 and above the grains, the recoil just really starts to kick you. I can shoot 210 grains all day, but the 225s, 250s, even my big butt gets to be a little bit of a pansy with the recoil. So,
Well, thank you so much for your expertise in both of the cartridges. And someday I will be coming up there with my 340 Weatherby, and we'll get something up there.
yeah, well, let's do it.